Hey guys, it's Justin from LitTube with another video of my face-to-face series. I've got my first mock draft done of the year. It's for a 12-man PPR league, and I'm going to be discussing in depth some of the picks that I made and just kind of, give you an idea of what you can expect going into this upcoming season where certain guys are getting drafted. So let's take a look.
Okay, fellas, let's get into this. So again, this is a 12-man PPR mock draft for the upcoming 2018 to 2019 NFL season for fantasy football. I am picking at the 9 spot. I know I don't have the numbers up here as far as, each spot. I just have the rounds on the side. It goes from round 1 to round 15. This is from Fantasy Football Calculator, by the way. So the drafts end at round 15. I didn't bother taking a kicker because in the drafts I do, they're always longer than 15 rounds, so I just kind of assumed that, I take the kicker later. But I'm at the 9 spot here, so my first pick was DeAndre Hopkins. Before I get into all of my picks, I just want to make some observations here. So, to start the draft, you had Todd Gurley go number 1 overall, which isn't a huge surprise. I definitely think he's emerged as one of the big-time running backs in the league, and he had a huge year last year. We had Le'Veon Bell, David Johnson, Ezekiel Elliott. Now, for me, if it's a standard format league, I definitely think these are the guys that should, no question, be off the board first, without even any sort of debate. And it's really interesting how you would rank them because they're all really close, I think, in that format. I think you can make a case for any one of these guys in a standard format going number 1 overall. But for full point PPR, I really do believe Ezekiel Elliott deserves to go last out of that pack of guys because Ezekiel Elliott, as good as he is as a runner and as great as that Cowboys offensive line is, he's not a back that has great receiving game skills. He's just not. He doesn't do a whole lot in the passing game. But he is a great runner, and definitely out of all the power backs you could draft, he's the best one to go and get. And he's got proven production in his first 2 years. So definitely a guy to target early, but for full point PPR, my number 1 would actually be David Johnson. I'm not concerned at all about how he broke his wrist last year. That's not an injury that's going to limit him into the upcoming season. It's not like he tore an ACL. So it's nothing that's going to potentially limit him at all going into the upcoming season. So you have to project David Johnson as you would a season earlier, where he absolutely crushed it. For me, he's my number 1. He's the best receiving back, arguably, other than maybe Le'Veon Bell. But Le'Veon Bell's having a contract holdout issue, and that's never really good coming into the season. I mean, he kind of had that going on last year, still managed to come out and produce, but I don't like seeing that. So for me, David Johnson's number 1, no question. Then it gets kind of interesting from there. I'd probably go Le'Veon Bell 2nd, Todd Gurley 3rd, Ezekiel Elliott 4th, is probably how I would do it for full point PPR. But again, with these 4 top backs, you can't really go wrong with any of them. Then we finally have Antonio Brown go off the board at the 5th spot, first receiver, and it makes sense because Brown, has proven year after year after year he just produces at a high level, and so he deserves to be the first receiver off the board. You just kind of question, okay, when is he going to have a season when he's not one of the best receivers? Is that in the near future, or, but you got to keep drafting based on consistency, right? And he's been consistent year after year after year, so you don't really know when he's going to fall off and have a subpar season. It might not be for a very long time. Then you have Alvin Kamara. Concern with him is more to do with workload, because even though he was amazing last season, had a very high yards per carry, got a bunch of receptions, a lot of fantasy points. He did that on a limited amount of touches. You wonder if the touches are going to be there. But we know Mark Ingram's going to be suspended for at least like the first 4 weeks. So for at least the first 4 weeks, you would assume Kamara is going to be amazing. But it's once Mark Ingram comes back that I'd be concerned. That's why I wouldn't want to take Kamara this early in the draft. For me, he's more of a late first, early second round pick just because of that risk. But again, we know the upside you're getting with Alvin Kamara because we saw it last year as when he was a rookie. And really, when you're in the Saints offense, you have a great chance to be a special player and get a lot of fantasy points. So, a little early for me here, but again, you can't really complain too much about it. And then, it goes on from there. Saquon. Melvin Gordon's the one that kind of had my head scratching here because the thing about Melvin Gordon is, yes, he's a running back, a primary running back in an offense, going to get a lot of touches, but he hasn't been efficient with his touches over the past couple of years. And what's worse is that Austin Eckler, I think this year is going to come in and be the receiving back and take away a lot of that third down work, a lot of the passing game work from Melvin Gordon. I think it's going to be sucked up by Austin Eckler. So I don't want to be taking Melvin Gordon this year in the mid-first round. For me, I wouldn't consider drafting him till later in the first or the second for those because of Eckler. I'm concerned about him, but again, that allowed me to pick DeAndre Hopkins at my 9 spot here. And here's the thing about Hopkins. I mean, he's looking like the next Antonio Brown with the way he's playing. I mean, he's getting the consistencies there. Last year, we saw even when Deshaun Watson went out and was done for the year after that ACL injury in practice, DeAndre Hopkins was still lighting it up week after week with Tom Savage as the starting quarterback. And I'd love to see that. I'd love to see a receiver who can still produce at a high level with a subpar quarterback. I mean, that tells you all you need to know. So DeAndre Hopkins, for me, a surefire first-round pick as a wide receiver. Loved getting him here all the way at 9. Honestly, I think in a lot of other mock drafts, he probably would have went a little earlier than that. But, there was a big run on running backs here in the first round. As you can see, only 3 receivers taken in the first round for this mock draft. Then you had Kareem Hunt, you had Odell Beckham, Leonard Fournette. So it comes back around, and for my second pick, I drafted Michael Thomas. Now, I think that's, not to toot my own horn here, but I think Michael Thomas in the second is just an amazing pick because can you really go wrong with the number 1 receiver in Drew Brees' offense for the Saints? Not to mention the fact Michael Thomas has produced huge his first 2 years in the league, and now I believe he's going into his 3rd season. There's just not anything to hate about Michael Thomas. He's going to be an excellent, surefire number 1 receiver. I'd be highly shocked if he finished outside the top 10 for receivers. So the way I'm looking at it, I got 2 top 10 receivers here with my first 2 picks. Now, sure, that's going to probably make me a little weaker at running back. So that's a concern, but through the first 2 rounds here, given that I didn't have the early pick, I couldn't grab any of these high-end elite running backs like Johnson, Elliott, Bell, Gurley. Couldn't get any of those guys at my spot. So I'm feeling pretty good here in the second round by having 2 surefire wide receiver 1s. Then it comes back around to the 3rd pick for me, and I decided to go Alex Collins here. And, what's interesting about this is it seems like Alex Collins, his draft stock has kind of climbed because I did a couple mocks earlier, or I don't know that I did mocks. I think I just looked at the ADPs about a month or 2 ago. And at that point, Alex Collins was like a 5th-round pick, which was ridiculous. But here I took him in the 3rd because I was like, hey, I need a running back here. And to me, he was definitely the best one at that spot. I mean, look at it this way. Alex Collins was big time for the Ravens down the stretch last year, and now they did not draft a running back, and they did not sign a veteran running back. The Ravens, they could have signed someone like a C.J. Anderson to get in the mix and compete. They didn't do that. They didn't even draft a running back in any round of this NFL draft. So that just tells you they know Alex Collins is the guy. I mean, what do you think is going to happen? Do you think he's going to lose his job to Buck Allen? To Kenneth Dixon, who was out for a whole year? No, that's not going to happen. I don't know what the situation is. Danny Woodhead, I'm pretty sure he retired. I think this is Alex Collins' team at this point. And honestly, I'm as high as you can be on Alex Collins coming into this upcoming season. I just think the dude is a beast. So, love to actually get him as my number 1 running back here, given that I drafted 2 high-end wide receivers earlier. I'm completely fine with Alex Collins in the 3rd round. Then it comes back around to my 4th pick at the 9 spot. And at this point, I take Allen Robinson. Now, I know some of you might be like, oh, well, Allen Robinson, he's coming off this big injury where he didn't even play last year, and now he's on the Bears. They're a shitty team. Well, hold on, not so fast. The Bears are on the rise, okay? The Chicago Bears are on the rise. I would not be surprised if they're this year's Los Angeles Rams, meaning, think about last year, pretty much nobody expected the Rams to be as competitive as they were, making the playoffs. No one really saw that coming, not even myself. Being a Rams fan, I didn't see that coming. But if you look at what the Bears have done, Mitchell Trubisky from year 1 to year 2, we expect some progression there. They bring in Allen Robinson, so finally they have a number 1 receiver. Last year they had a bunch of scrubs at receiver. So you're asking a rookie quarterback to throw to a bunch of scrubs. That's not going to work very well. They have the backfield between Jordan Howard and Tariq Cohen. Now again, I wouldn't want just a single one of those guys to be my every down running back, but in a tandem, they work really well because Cohen's the receiving back, Jordan Howard is the between the tackles grinder, their power back, and they work great together. Very productive backfield, very great offensive line for the Bears, and their defense is pretty good too. So all around, I think the Bears could make a push to be like a wild card playoff team. I mean, it's going to be tough because their division also has the Vikings and the Packers, and I'm pretty high on both of those teams, particularly the Vikings. So it's not going to be a cakewalk for the Bears by any means, but I think they're going to be much improved from last year. And so you take the number 1 receiver in that offense, Allen Robinson is going to be fed targets because they got no one else to go to. The only other people that Trubisky's going to be throwing the ball to potentially are Trey Burton, the tight end they picked up in free agency, and Tariq Cohen out of the backfield. But Allen Robinson is far and away the best receiver in this offense now, and I think he's just going to be peppered with targets all season. So to get him as my 3rd receiver in the 4th round, I'm feeling pretty good about that, honestly. I think there's a lot of upside there, and I think that, his floor, probably the floor of his production is probably worthy of like a 4th or 5th round pick. So, I'm getting him at a good value here, I think, in the 4th round. Now, my next pick was interesting because I didn't really know what to do with this spot. I was trying to kind of figure it out. I figured, you know what? Rather than just draft nothing but running backs and receivers all the way down to like round 11, let me go ahead and take a top-tier tight end here. I had the choice between Evan Ingram and Greg Olsen. And I said, you know what? Let me take a shot on Evan Ingram because he was big time as a rookie. You figure he can't be any worse going into his 2nd year. They mostly use him as a wide receiver if you think about it. They don't even really line him up as a tight end that often. He's more like a slot receiver that they just throw the ball to a ton. Now granted, the one concern here is that, even if the Giants offense gets better, which I think it will, you could see a situation where Eli Manning throws the ball around more to different receivers because Odell Beckham was out a significant part of last year, and Evan Ingram really thrived when in his absence. If Odell Beckham's healthy the whole year, that could definitely take away from Evan Ingram's target share. So looking back on this pick, I don't really feel great about it because, I'm not guaranteed that Evan Ingram's going to have the same target share as he did last year. But at this spot, I was really thinking either Evan Ingram, Greg Olsen, or if I was going to go running back, I was going to get Dion Lewis. But looking back on how this draft turned out, it's fine I didn't get Dion Lewis because I got a bunch of other similar players to him to fill my other running back spots. And you can see where Greg Olsen went and the 6th round, the end of the 6th round. That was a great value for the guy that got Greg Olsen there. But overall, I don't feel terrible about my Evan Ingram pick. Don't feel great about it. But let's move on. So in the 6th round, I get Tariq Cohen. And, Tariq Cohen, look, coming out of the backfield for Mitch Trubisky, he's going to catch a lot of balls. He flashed his potential in his rookie year for sure. I feel like this is a great guy for a PPR format. Now, am I thrilled about having him as an RB2? Not really. Ideally, he's more of an RB3 for you. But you know what? I've got big-time receivers on my roster. I've got Evan Ingram. So I don't feel bad about this pick. I can afford to line up a weaker RB2 when my receivers are just completely nuts. I mean, really, my receivers are nuts. So we got Cohen in the 6th round. Now I come back around, I get Emmanuel Sanders. Emmanuel Sanders always seems to go at a value every year. Now the 7th round might have been a little higher for him than I needed to pick him. But listen, you could do a lot worse as your 4th receiver. And now the Broncos bring in Case Keenum. Much better quarterback situation. So I could see Demaryius Thomas or Emmanuel Sanders, or potentially both, having really solid seasons. So I grab a piece of that Broncos offense there in the 7th round. If I have an injury to an Allen Robinson or one of my other receivers, then I can feel good about having Sanders there, and he'll be a good bye week filler as well. And a good flex play when he has great matchups. Then, in the 8th round, I had another tough decision to make here because I was picking between Duke Johnson and Marshawn Lynch. Ultimately, I went with Duke Johnson. Now, the downside to this is Cleveland has a crowded backfield. They've got Nick Chubb, Carlos Hyde, and Duke Johnson. What I'm hoping is that Duke Johnson can give me something close to what he gave me last season, because I had Duke Johnson on my PPR team last year, and he was really great. I think he finishes like the 12th best or 13th best running back in PPR scoring. Dude catches a lot of balls. He gets a couple touchdowns. He has the potential to be a top 12 back in full point PPR leagues. So in the 8th round, I'm thinking, why the hell not? This guy did good for me last year. Maybe he can do it again. Again, what I'm concerned about is they have Hyde and Chubb, which you're going to get, between those two guys, you're going to get pretty much all the carries. And then the team did bring in Jarvis Landry, so you do have some concern with, okay, maybe Tyrod Taylor or Baker Mayfield or whoever's back there for them just tosses more targets Jarvis Landry's way, more of those short distance targets, and it leaves less for Duke Johnson. So I do have concerns with Duke Johnson this year that I did not have last year, but regardless, to get him as my 4th running back in full point PPR when I didn't draft a running back until round 3, I don't feel bad about that. Then in the 9th round, I pick Marquise Goodwin. Now here I was thinking, well look, everyone's so high on Jimmy Garoppolo, but what about the guys he's throwing the ball to? Do you want George Kittle, the tight end? Do you want Pierre Garçon? Or do you want Marquise Goodwin? And honestly, I think Marquise Goodwin flashed a lot of potential with Jimmy Garoppolo last year, so I see a real connection developing between those two. And frankly, as my wide receiver 5 in fantasy, I could do a hell of a lot worse than Marquise Goodwin, a guy that could potentially end up being Jimmy Garoppolo's number 1 target. Now again, like I said, he's got competition from Pierre Garçon for that. He's got competition potentially from George Kittle for that. But for me, I'll take a shot in the dark as my wide receiver 5, get a piece of this San Fran offense. Then, in round 10, perhaps one of the best values out of the guys I drafted, Theo Riddick, running back on the Lions. Now, yes, the Lions drafted Kerryon Johnson, but I don't see Theo Riddick's role going away. We know what his role is. He's going to be that 3rd down back, the receiving back that gets targets, and that is valuable in full point PPR. It just is. Even if Theo Riddick gets even if he averages 2 carries a game, as long as he's getting the receiving work, that's all I give a shit about, because it's full point PPR. He's my running back 4. Okay, so you see what I did here, right? I got 3 running backs that are all pretty similar between Tariq Cohen, Duke Johnson, and Theo Riddick. All of them have a shot to be that guy that finishes as a top 12 PPR running back that goes later than he actually should. So I've got 3 chances to land on that guy, and maybe 2 of them end up doing that. You know what I mean? So for me, I drafted a wide receiver heavy roster, and after Alex Collins, who I expect to be more of a workhorse running back, after him, I've just got a bunch of guys that are going to do the receiving work, and that is valuable in full point PPR. It really is. So then I finally take a quarterback in round 11. I am definitely an advocate of the late round QB strategy. especially in PPR leagues. So I went with Pat Mahomes. For me, Pat Mahomes is getting underrated. And again, there's other guys I could have picked at this spot. I could have taken Mariota, could have taken, Jameis. I mean, there's guys I could have taken at this spot instead, but I just feel like Mahomes, the upside is there because if you think about it, last year, who ended up being like almost like he was like a top 3 quarterback last year, Alex Smith, completely out of nowhere. No one drafted the guy, but he was the signal caller for the Chiefs, and he ended up being like a top 3 quarterback. Now, if Alex Smith can be a top 3 quarterback with that offense, and they just brought in Sammy Watkins, I really believe Pat Mahomes has the potential to do something similar. I'm not saying the guy's going to be a top 3 quarterback, but listen, I've got a really good track record with drafting quarterbacks late. 2 years ago, I drafted Cam Newton when nobody fucking wanted him, and I drafted him like in the 14th round, and he ends up being the number 1 quarterback. Then last year, on one of my teams, I picked up Deshaun Watson out of free agency. And obviously he was good for an extended period of time. Then I picked up Jared Goff after that, and he was very serviceable. So I have a great track record with picking up either free agent quarterbacks or drafting late round quarterbacks that ball out. And I really think Mahomes has the potential to ball out. I'm not saying he's going to do what Alex Smith did last year. But would I be shocked if he finished as wide quarterback 6 or 7? Hell no, I wouldn't be surprised by that. Not at all. Definitely think the guy's got top 12 potential in him because of that Chiefs offense and what it can do. It's a well-oiled machine. Kareem Hunt in the backfield, 2 field-stretching wide receivers in Tyreek Hill and Sammy Watkins, and you have Travis Kelce, an elite tight end. He's got weapons out the wazoo, this guy. And not only that, I think he's a really talented quarterback, but I guess we're going to find out this year, right? Because we don't have a whole lot of tape on him or anything. I think he had like 1 or 2 starts last year, and he did all right in those starts. But that's why he's going late, is because no one really knows what he is yet. But I think I know. And I think I know what this offense is. So I'm fine taking him as my number 1 quarterback in the 11th round. I think it's a good value. Good late round quarterback strategy. I come back around, and I get the Baltimore defense. I'm not going to say much about that. My next pick after that was Austin Eckler. Okay, so Austin Eckler, like I said earlier, he has potential to be that guy that steals the receiving work from Melvin Gordon. We saw a little bit of it last year, actually, and I think it's going to continue into this upcoming season. So I see him as a great flyer. He's very similar to the other running backs I drafted in Theo Riddick, Duke Johnson, Tariq Cohen, but he's another one of those guys that you draft late and he could surprise in a full-point PPR league. Because, look, if he gets most of the receiving work out of the backfield, which I think could very well happen, although it's not a guarantee, but I think it's very well could happen this year for him. That's going to make him probably a top 20 running back in PPR. I mean, full point PPR leagues, again, the running backs that catch balls will get up there, okay? So I'm loving that. He's my 5th running back off the board, okay? And you're getting that kind of upside, so I love that. And then I come back around and get Spencer Ware in the 14th round. And, I didn't really feel great about this pick, but there didn't seem to be a whole lot available that interested me this late in the draft. And I was just looking at, hey, like Spencer Ware, nice handcuff, if Kareem Hunt goes down, Spencer Ware is going to get a huge workload potentially. So I figured, what the heck. And then, you can always cut him if someone else comes along at free agency. So that he's just a bench player. But again, if Kareem Hunt gets injured early in the season, it ends up being a really good draft pick. Otherwise, probably a guy you cut off your team. And then coming back around in the 15th round, again, I wish these mock drafts went to more rounds than this, but I went ahead and picked a backup quarterback. I got Dak Prescott. Now, I basically just did this to hedge against Pat Mahomes in case I'm wrong about Pat Mahomes. I don't think I'm going to be wrong. But if Pat Mahomes comes out and falls flat on his face and ends up sucking ass, despite the great situation he's in, at least I took another quarterback that, has proven in the past he can be a top 10 quarterback in fantasy, in Dak Prescott. Now, Dak Prescott doesn't have the best situation going into this season. That's probably why he's going late. Also, he didn't have a good season last year. He's got a bunch of scrub receivers, and that's really the knock on him, right? He's got the scrub receivers, but Elliott's coming back, and, Dak does better with Elliott on the field. And, again, you can't be scared to take mobile quarterbacks who don't have a lot of weapons around them. You can't be scared to do that, because think about what Tyrod Taylor would do on the Bills when he didn't have that much around him, but he was able to run. And think about what Cam Newton did 2 years ago when everyone was like, oh, Kelvin Benjamin's out. He's not going to have anybody to throw to. He ends up being the number one quarterback. You can't sleep on these guys. You can't sleep on mobile quarterbacks. So I said, fuck it. Let me take him. Maybe he blows up. Maybe I forget about Pat Mahomes by week 4 and I'm just starting Dak Prescott the whole year. So that's really why I took the second quarterback. And, normally I would just take one quarterback, just like I usually take one tight end. Leave the other bench spots for your running backs and receivers so you can take some flyers, maybe guys that break out. But in this situation, I hedged my bets. I said, you know what, we'll take Dak as a backup. Between Pat Mahomes and Dak Prescott, I'm pretty sure one of them is going to break out. So, and if not, they'll be good streaming, stream based on matchup. But that was my mock draft. You can see the board. You can see who else got drafted at what spot. But again, this is a late June mock draft, so things will probably change between now and when people start doing their real drafts and, like late July, August, September, whatever. But this is late June, and this is what you get. Go ahead and leave a comment, like and subscribe. And yeah, guys, let me know what you think about this mock draft. Let me know what you think about my strategy at the 9 spot, what I did here. Again, I don't think it's the best spot to draft at this year, but I think I did very well given the spot I had. But let me know what you think, fellas. Take care.